Welcome, everyone. This is going to be the most interesting, most entertaining segment of the summit, guaranteed. We're all collected here by a passion for interactive spaces and step into the Metaverse and Untangle Web 3.0, a slightly clickbaity title, but we're genuinely excited to expose what has been a fascinating upswing in interest in the space, liquidity generated by it, impact to the industry. So it's a great pleasure to be here with you at the summit. I'm Louis Gresham, a partner at March Gaming, and I've got the pleasure of hanging out with my dear friends Piyush and Bruno, entrepreneurs who've scaled worlds that players, many millions of players have enjoyed, players, spectators, community members have enjoyed interacting with over the years. So we'll take you through a lot of things today. The virtual spaces that these entrepreneurs have built, the dynamic changing tailwinds that are tailwinds, headwinds, opportunities, threats in this space. So topics that are all on everyone's minds right now, and a lot of fun stuff to unpack. And perhaps we'll even squeeze in a little bit of questions at the end, depending on how much these guys run away with the topic. So what I'd like to do to kick off is table stakes here. I mean, like, what are we actually talking about? And we'll talk through definitions, the pieces that make up these concepts that really many people have different perceptions of why they matter, what they are. But let's start with virtual worlds and virtual spaces. People coming together in a digital space to do something together. And Piyush, why don't we start with you? I mean, you've built the market leader in India for folks congregating together and spectating, whether it's esports or people playing games. Like, why do so many millions of people get together in this shared digital space? Like, what brings them back? What brings them there in the first place? What's this virtual space that you've built, and why does it matter today?
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Chris. Good to be here. I'm the founder and CEO of Router, come from the market which has 450 million gamers as we speak, and should get to 500 million gamers playing on mobile in no time. What we've built is Twitch for India, but very focused on the mobile games. Extending to what you're saying, I think what's happening is something that we've seen very clearly is that the way society is completely changing, that there are different things that brought us together over different decades. And what is happening right now is that games are bringing people together more than anything else, right? I used to read it, some years back, that people will meet more playing games or watching games. But what we've seen with our product is that the fact that there is a lot of gaming content, a lot of esports content which people are consuming, they're kind of meeting and hanging out together and doing multiple things, right? And the clear expectation is that how can a platform like Router increase their experience and take them to a world which is completely metaverse-y, if I can talk about. And that's what is really happening, that the emotions are so strong together right now that they can really get transported to anything that we can make them believe works.
Yeah, and I want to highlight, you mentioned Twitch, and Bruno, you played a formative role dating from the early 2010s. We both were lucky to work at Riot in the early days. I mean, Twitch, for those of you who might not be aware, I mean, exited for almost $1 billion to Amazon, built a mature business going back almost, I think, a decade ago or so. I mean, these behaviors have been ingrained for a long time, but we're just starting to talk about this concept now, and there's a couple reasons for that. But before we jump into why this topic is talked about more now, despite being such an ingrained behavior, despite being something that tens, hundreds of millions of people have been doing for a long time, Bruno, would love to hear from you about the early days. I mean, Twitch, the ascent of Twitch and Riot Games, like a lot of these things going back a decade, and you were there at the ground floor for a lot of these things. So tell us more about what it was like at that point versus now. So Piyush gave us a window into the scale that we're seeing today. But where did this really come from?
Yeah, so pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I started this over 10 years ago, and I think it was very organic. Initially, the question was, wait, people are watching other people play video games? how does that make any sense? You know, like you want to play, why are you going to watch the other? And it just started growing, and I think the secret was a couple things. A good game that's easy to watch and follow, and then community. So having a life outside of the core gameplay, but having a following, people that identify themselves as gamers, as part of that community, and a lot of grassroots. I remember the first tournaments, go to, and somebody in the audience would cast and be, talking about what's happening. Players were playing for fun, but very competitive. And then at one point, it started to structure, prize money started to come in, and then professional teams were formed, leagues and sponsors. And I think more recently, there was quite a bit of hype as well, a few years ago on investing in esports teams and leagues, and even creating games for esports. And I think that's where it started to deviate, from the origins, where you can't make a game for an esport, right? You have to make a great game that people like to play and follow and watch, and then naturally will transition into becoming an esports. And now established, right? We have League of Legends, for example, have 50 million plus people watching World Championship. It's a global sport, and players live off of this. And it's really not going anywhere, right? That's where the youth is following and watching.
So one thing that gets us really excited in market, and that we're seeing a lot of traction, I mean, they're household names at this point, and even if you don't know exactly how they work, I'm sure you've heard of these. There's tens of billions of dollars of value being generated by prototype metaverse constructs, proto-metaverses for short, like Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft. Like these, they are true to form virtual worlds where people gather together to do all manner of things. So we've seen this phenomenon of people getting together as a community to watch others play. We've seen people get together to play together socially, education, work, all kinds of applications that takes place together in these virtual spaces. Both of you made a decision to start companies to carve out a presence in this proto-metaverse stage. We're a long way away from all wearing goggles and being transported to an immediate digital reality, but we have these shared virtual spaces. And there's a lot of large incumbents that comprise meaningful chunks of the trillions of dollars of valuation that falls into this category. So from an entrepreneur's perspective, why start a company now when you have giants like Facebook attempting to build this platform in their own vein, these walled gardens, Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard for $70 billion this quarter. There's a lot of money out there, a lot of big players. So why now? Why start a company? I mean, Bruno, you made a decision to leave your executive position at Riot to build one of these anew. Why now? What's exciting and what's difficult?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. There's the personal motivation, right? That's the real drive. The timing as well. I felt ready. I felt like I've done a lot in the industry and learned a lot and had good contacts and knew what I was doing. And on the other side, I think there's no better time to start a game studio than now. The tools available, like game engines such as Unity or Unreal, cloud computing, networks, and access to things doing like multiplayer gaming with fast networks, low latency, and now more recently, blockchain and others. So the technologies are there. In the past, there were big barriers to entry, right? And that's where like the big studios would kind of thrive. And it was also very labor intensive. You need a lot of developers and so forth and so on. And I think we found a niche, that there isn't a good opportunity. It speaks back to the background that we have, and we're looking at bringing, mass market games that are very immersive, engaging. The way we measure ourselves is time spent in the game, really innovating the design and the core gameplay first, and also original IP that carries that as a base. And long term, we want to be around for decades to come, have a portfolio of games, expand beyond games into media, entertainment, movies, consumer products, etc. And it all starts by, building this snowball of fans and audience that will connect to us, build a community, and of course come back to the core gameplay, but around the game as well, whether it's streaming and watching, influencers or esports, events, etc. So that's kind of how we see our version of a metaverse, right? Is somewhere where you find yourself, you're happy to spend money, for example, you're not forced to monetize or there's a paywall, just generally excited about the content that's coming in, and being part of it and being proud of being part of it.
Let's talk about platforms. You mentioned the cross-platform approach that you're taking to build this world that your players are going to be engaging in. Piyush, the vast majority of your business and your product is oriented towards mobile. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about demography. And we've got over 3 billion people that are participating in, whether playing or watching, spectating in these virtual worlds today. And individual products, I mean, tens of millions of people in the products that each of you have touched. So let's talk about the form factors. I mean, as mentioned before, like we're not all in our homes wearing some kind of lightweight VR goggle, all virtually transporting here. We're physically co-located. And we're still participating in these via mobile phones and PCs, consoles, etc. So in this prototype stage, participating in these digital worlds, what does it mean? What's the platform? What's your view on platform? Like mobile has been very good to you. Do you think that's going to continue for the next couple years? Like how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, so in fact, since your first question, that what motivated us was the fact that we believe that a large part of gaming that was getting done over the last decade or so kind of transformed, at least in the developing countries, onto mobile games in the last 3-4 years, right? Suddenly from the inertia of you having a console or a PC, you could play a game in a garden, you can play a game in a train. And back home in India, what we saw was pretty much each and every household has at least 1 or 2 gamers who are playing a game on their mobile, right? And that's we saw as a change in the behavior. And we wanted to be the platform that would enable and be there for those people. So that's the first part. I strongly believe that a large part of the gaming audience globally is undergoing a huge change. And most of the publishers are now focusing on mobile games. They are coming up with their mobile versions, which wasn't available, say, a year or 2 back. And that's where the entire change will happen. So that's first part. Second part is the fact that your entire experience is now, in your hand and can travel with you to anywhere that you go. I mean, I can play a game sitting here and, you won't even know that I'm playing a game, right? It's that immersive. I think a lot of experience layers can be built on top of it is something that we at Router are very excited about, right? So we believe that there are 2 very strong, segues into the mobile gaming experience. One is into the Web3, which is very, very important for us. We have already stepped into it. And the second is the Metaverse. And that's where we want to partner possibly each and every gaming studio which is looking to make their existence with mobile games.
Let's double back to Web3 in a moment. Bruno, I'm curious, I mean, given the approach that you all have taken in treating each platform as an equal, where do you think growth is going to happen? I mean, you're investing in a product that's platform agnostic, but in terms of the player base, affinity in the audiences that you're going afterward, what do you think ends up happening in the next couple years?
I think cross-platform will more and more take a bigger stake in the future. The historic problem is that developers made a PC game or a mobile game or a console game, and you look at the overall market and the size of the gaming industry and revenue and all that, and generalize in categories. And that's the limitation we have as well. So the issue was porting one to the other wasn't as trivial. So you get a game like Call of Duty and Call of Duty Mobile, they're 2 games. League of Legends and Wild Rift, they're 2 games. PUBG Mobile, and so forth and so on. And these are massive studios that have all the resources. The key problem there is the input. So, as humans, we have hand-eye coordination and so much we can do with our fingers. And so if you're in front of a computer with a mouse and a keyboard, generally you have an advantage against someone in a mobile network playing on the phone. So that was always a problem because it was designed for one and it's very hard to port to the other. So what we've been doing was from day one, design the game the way inputs affect what happens in the game to be fair across any device. And playtesting week over week and noticing, hey, you won the game, what device were you on? And that never mattered. Like, we never asked each other, were you playing PC or were you playing console, etc. Now, why is this important going forward? A lot of the social aspect also comes from this, right? Like, after school, I can go to your house, and then you sit on the couch playing Xbox, and a couple friends are next to you playing on their mobile device, but everybody's playing together. Also, account progression, right? Your friends lists, items that you purchase, it's all just in one place. It's less so technology. I think that's an interesting point. Like, you know, a few years back, developers were focused on how do we build technology for cross-platform. The way we see is a design problem space is really figuring out how input and fairness takes into account. Yeah, so I think that's going to be a trend, you know, instead of fragmenting, because effectively you have different games, you have to service these games, patch, worry about security and all, and so forth and so on. So I see that. I think mobile will continue to dominate growth because just the power you have in these devices now, and the screen, and the way like colors and contrast and all, and processing power and downloads, etc. And you know, there's new joysticks you can plug on the side, and you know, it just feels good. So I see mobile continue to lead, but cross-platform becoming more ubiquitous.
In terms of tools, these have come up a couple times in the response that you guys have given, like the enabling technologies, the things that are powering the growth of these worlds. I mean, it's unavoidable to not talk about Web3, blockchain, the potential for these things. And let's delve into that, because the two of you have different philosophies really on the timing, the way to best integrate these potentially. I mean, Piyush, let's start with you, since you've been pushing aggressively into the space now. Why now? What is it helpful in terms of a tool that underpins the metaverse construct that your community is engaging in? What is it useful for? Where are the compromises?
Yeah, so what we've seen is that the content consumption behavior has been very linear for over a decade or maybe more with Twitch, right? What is needed and what people or gamers are seeking is a more involvement in the functioning of things. They're not just ready to come here and create or consume content. They want to have a much better role play as far as the experience of the platform is concerned. Second is the fact that they believe that the revenue which is being made by platforms like us, or for that matter, any other streaming platform, or the creator is not getting divided in a better manner, right? If so, there is a huge scope of disruption in terms of how rev share can happen. It's very concentrated towards a very small percentage of people on the platform, while the time spent by the users and the creator is actually quite a lot by everybody, right? Third is the way, for example, they want to have a say on the governance of how things are. Like, for example, I am watching an esports tournament, but can I just suggest that, and a tournament rule can be changed? So what we are seeing is a very large opportunity in the way that the engagement between the viewer and the creator can really change with the help of Web3. And we believe that, and something that we have seen very closely, because Router functions on gamification. So what we have is a very strong virtual currency right from day one, right? So at this stage, about 300 million Router coins are in circulation on the platform, right? What it means is that we have been rewarding users from a watch to earn and create to earn model from day one, right? We believe that if you're spending time on our platform, it values something, it's worth something, and that is what a coin is. And we want to just take it to the next level and maybe take it to a level where it can be converted into tokens, people can get more involvement, and that's the world that we imagine, that the parity is there between everybody who's involved in the ecosystem.
So creating value, allowing your community to participate in the value creation is key then.
Even the revenue, that I believe that, just the way society needs to change overall, I think even in gaming, there has to be a better way for people to make, some people make tons of money while the others who are watching are not making that. Can there be a better, system to do that?
Yep.
That's what we are imagining.
Yep. Yeah, that democratization has been interesting. I mean, Bruno, you mentioned engines earlier. These enabling technologies have helped level the playing field in a lot of ways, like allow smaller companies to compete. Do you see, I mean, right now, the tools that you all have been using to build your emergent product, where do you see the stack evolving? What's useful and powerful today? And then do you see Web3 as an enabling technology on par with those? Tell us about the toolbox right now as a developer building a virtual world. What's important?
Yeah, we try to keep it simple, at this stage. So we're working with Unity and AWS, and there's so many services and things that allows us to do the things we do. I think for blockchain, Web3, I'll use the same example about the esports I said in the beginning, right? Imagine you build a league for esports and you have all the show and the professional teams, etc. And then you go make a game to do the esports with that game. It's tricky, right? Because you can have all of this well done, but if the game is not great and doesn't stand on its own, then nobody's going to care to watch the stream, etc. So I think the trend with Web3 is the same, right? Let's first make a great game that can engage people, get massive scale, and then see, what else should we add to our ecosystem, whether it is streaming esports or NFT and crypto, etc., to serve a purpose, right? Is it for acquisition of new people? Is it to retain people? Is it for monetization? And then really think carefully about the use case. Also for, up-and-coming studios, we have limited dev resources. And, it's very competitive these days as well, hiring good engineers and engineering teams. So distracting early on could be a cost for us. So we see it as part of a strategy, also that our audience, needs, and then let's go service that, and not the reverse, right? Let's go find something to do so we can use the technology. That's how we think at the moment.
Yeah, that's helpful. Let's talk about the audience here. So both of you have mentioned the size, the type of participation. I mean, for the benefit of the attendees of the summit, a lot of us that congregate here think about the financial underpinnings of these systems and the outcomes of them. In terms of the trillions of dollars of value in the space that can be classified as metaverse, the vast majority of it is purely for entertainment purposes. The liquidity that's generated in the space, vastly comprised by acquisition of companies building these worlds. The $100 billion in M&A last year, primarily studios. We've seen Zynga get acquired by Take-Two for $12+ billion in Q1. I mentioned Activision prior. As entrepreneurs generating enterprise value, where do you see those outcomes? Here in the audience, I mean, a lot of us are talking this week about macro and where the markets are going and all kinds of factors that are intersecting and affecting public-private valuations. From the entrepreneurial perspective in generating enterprise value, what do you see? You all are building towards these outcomes. What do you think happens from generating enterprise value?
So I think from our end, the key value that we are building is the community, right? We believe that the community that is getting built on our platform or something that gets built on a streaming platform is very, very valuable because it's like the biggest moat that a business can make. And I always see our business as three-step process. First is you bring similar people together, then you build communities, and then you monetize them, right? So for us, I think the biggest advantage or the biggest leverage or value that we are building is the community. Like community is building on the basis of games, age groups, languages. India is a very, very diverse country, and as we step into the other developing countries, we'll see much more diversity that can be built around communities. The second thing is, how can you enable a P2P transaction between them? That's going to help it. We are very fortunate to be in a country where UPI, for example, has completely transformed how money flows from one phone to the other, and how we can activate that at large scale where these communities are monetizing each other. But the larger value is how a streaming platform, which is pretty democratized in its existence, can play a very large role in the lifetime of a gaming studio, right? That's where we want to play a very important role, and we think the kind of enterprise value that we can build will be manifolds, because many games will come, go, they'll have their own cycles, but at the end of the day, there has to be one television. All I mean is one screen where people will watch the content. And that's where at least we see as a great value in the society.
Yeah. In terms of value, why do people spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year on assets that are purely virtual in these worlds? I mean, you mentioned some of the coins, Bruno, the skins in League of Legends. Like, why has that market gotten so large in the past decade for things that really don't have any extrinsic value? They're purely intrinsic until the integration of blockchain down in the next couple of years. 99.999% of this economy isn't tradable. These are things that you hold on the back end of Epic's systems as a notation. So, yeah, why hundreds of billions of dollars of spend for these things that only exist when we're with friends in virtual spaces?
Yeah, my opinion is directly correlated to time spent. That's it. So people spend more time, they spend time with their friends, they value getting peripherals and other things around, and they make time for it. So the correlation we saw, monetization and money spent and the time spent is 1-to-1. Now, what is it, right, that drives free-to-play games? Generally are about monetizing through skins, aesthetics, and things that allow you to self-express. And for example, you do very well with a character, and now you want to get a new skin for that character because you feel good and you want to be noted, right? So there's a vanity piece. Other people look at collections, right, and holding digital assets, and they're proud of building that collection. And it's very similar that maybe in the past we would do that with physical goods in other environments. Now, since we're spending time here, our friends are here, we're many times talking to each other, catching up while we play games, and you have disposable income, well, I want to be even more part of this community, right? I want to express myself and feel good about spending money. I think that's the key. It's thank you for this new content release. It looks great. It's for me, and I'm very happy to give the money. Versus in the past, initially, right, free-to-play games, you had paywalls, or we try to get your money with gacha systems and things like that. So I see that's why people in League of Legends, Fortnite, and other games are happy to spend their money. It's not a predatory system.
In terms of the concept of user-generated content, this is something that when we talk about virtual items, it's a natural corollary. We've seen these platforms like Roblox, where the content is being created not by the first-party platform owner, but by the participants in that community. And the spaces in which your audience are playing, they're the ones really driving the value. So, Bruno, you talk about time spent on the platform being a driver for purchase. What drives someone to take their energy and become a full-time creator or a full-time esports player? Like individuals participating in your ecosystems, that's an investment, a significant investment, if you're doing it beyond just entertainment. How does one make that choice in this new economy? And there are many, many millions of people choosing to build in these worlds, whether it's items or games or create content on your platform. Yeah. What does that choice look like today?
I think, this is one question that I also used to ask, and a lot of people ask me, why do people, first, they used to ask, why do people create gaming content? Then they say, why do people watch? So I think from a watch perspective, everybody is very clear, at least in this part of the world, that it's something that gives you a very different experience. It's an adrenaline rush. You gain a lot of knowledge, how to play a game better, etc. But from a creator's perspective, the analogy that I really, really believe in is that one of the things that our society grew up doing is watching or playing sports. So sports came first, and then, of course, games came, right? When we used to play sports, we always believed that there are only a handful of people who can go to that last line, become a great player or do whatever, right? And the path is very tough. But what gaming offers is a much better chance for you to make the hero on you come in front and become that person, right? Gaming offers you multiple careers between an esports player or a streamer or even a short-form content creator now, like with TikTok and even on Router with Reels, we are seeing different kind of content formats coming in. So what I believe is that the entire drive for people to bring in the hero on them in something that they believe will exist for decades from now is something that is pushing people to become a gaming creator. And we see this across, look at the choices. There are like hundreds of games. There are hundreds of content formats. In gaming, you can do this at any point in time. There's no restriction. You don't need to go out, come in, and you don't need multiple things to do it. That is what I think is driving the creator economy, and I strongly believe that a large part of creator economy globally would be driven by games. And it would be not just be driven by one or two content formats, but between multiple formats, and gaming will continue to adopt as the society moves.
Where do the two of you think society is moving? And we're seeing more and more people taking this path, not going for traditional professions, becoming members of these ecosystems, becoming digital professionals who never actually go into an office. Where do the two of you see these shared digital spaces acting at, are we talking about something that cannibalizes real-world interaction? Is it something that complements it? Is it enabling? There's competing versions of the metaverse out there. Mark Zuckerberg would have you experience it entirely through an Oculus headset from home, whereas others are much more excited about augmented reality, where those digital elements are overlaid onto the real world. So where do you think we are going as a society in terms of integrating digital into our lives? Where does it go from here?
So I think just sharing my thoughts on starting with the creator economy, because we are going there, right? And there's technology now, there's a trend. I see the impact back on the core base, not on the creators. The reason is, let's say a game has 10 million players. You can't have 9 million creators. So if you have 1% creators, that's 100,000 creators. That's still pretty good, like 100,000 people making good content and having a living out of it. But then you have 99%, that's the core base. So that's for who we make it or who they are making for. So if it resonates, like, hey, we love these creators, they speak the same language, we're part of the same community, yeah, that makes sense. If the motto is only let's all create for the sake of creating, it's hard to scale, right? Now, what I think is important, and that my experience also in the past with esports, is that the aspirational path, right? So I may never be a professional player or be a good content creator, but I'm part of a community and a large, player base that has a path for that. So I feel proud that in the game I play and I spend all this time, there is a path and you can keep going, competing until there's a professional and we can watch them. And I play the game that they play too, right? Or I see all these cool creators and making new content. And I know if I wanted to, I could. I'll probably never do it, right? But I have that path. So the aspirational path for the other 99% is more relevant, and then feeling like part of that. So then they will be a lot more willing to experiment and bring on board this content because it's open, it's democratized, right? Like I may never be a YouTuber, but I know I could, so I accept the fact that the other YouTuber is, successful, if that kind of makes sense. So I see that relationship, right? Like content creators will be always a minority, and the value they bring is to the core, like the 99%, and that's how we need to think about and over-service the core base, right? And then make people feel like, hey, they are the same as me, and I'm proud to see that they're taking that path in life and making a living off of that. Now, I'm very more receptive to purchase content and contribute.
Let's talk more about that 99%, those who are consuming it. Where do you think that happens? I mean, the majority of Apple's App Store revenue is purely free-to-play gaming. People on phones, like the hundreds of millions of people playing games on their phones in India, that kind of experience. But Bruno, that 99%, that consuming audience, the non-creators, where is that going to happen in the next, let's talk 5 years from now? Do we still think that we're on laptops and phones and consoles? Does it look different? Whose vision of that 99% consumption that's out there right now do you think will be proven right?
As far as platform, or
how does that experience happen? Which device? Is it hours at a time, 10 minutes at a time, mobile, VR? That consumption pattern is something that I don't think anyone agrees on right now, 5 years out from now.
Yeah, it's hard to predict, right, certain things. Like VR, like when it first came out, we were all super excited, right? And then scaling has been a challenge. There's also human limitations. For me, for example, I get seasick and car sick, and it's a challenge. I put a VR headset. It's hard for me to play more than 30 minutes or so. But when you're playing a PC game and like a deep RPG or adventure or something, and you can play for 4 hours, 5 hours in a row, 6 hours. So they're very deep, immersive experiences. And then the phone is like faster pace. I want to check in something. So I think what's going to happen is, some of these games and experiences will have the around the game, the meta game that goes around. So we may open the phone and not necessarily play a match, but we're looking at new content releases, we're talking to people, we're seeing what's coming up. And then cross-platform progression, so I get home now, I'm gonna go do a certain thing, and it's all the same, core that can be manifested in different platforms and times. That's kind of how I see it, and for us, we don't define ourselves by a platform, so we're not a mobile company, or we also don't define ourselves by business model. We see today the opportunity for our audience is cross-platform, free-to-play, and the way we define ourselves is who is our audience, right? Who are we here to service, and do we do a good job for them? If business model changes, new platform comes out, we'll chase those.
Let's talk about the evolution of the audience, not on the hardware side, but on the enabling technology side, on the software side. I mean, something that has been interesting to observe in the markets that I'm sure has been a hot topic of discussion here at the conference, given how recent it is the behavior in the macro side of the crypto markets. Trillions of dollars of value, massive fluctuation, a relatively small number of participants in that economy, mere millions of wallets. What do you think from a macro perspective is going to happen in participation in blockchain? Is that audience going to grow to the point where it becomes more interesting in terms of your addressable market of players? Are we going to see hundreds of millions of wallets participating in these economies and transacting in this environment? Will it stay relatively small? What do you think about the evolution of the participation in blockchain? Piyush, I know you're quite bullish on this, so I'm curious.
No, we are very bullish about it, and I can see what is happening around, but that's because I think the fundamentals are getting corrected and lots of things are going to change, but broadly, the adoption of blockchain is only going to increase, and I can say from the perspective of content and gaming, what we very strongly believe is that, one of the first points that I made when we started discussing that the entire balance between the different parts of the ecosystem needs to be maintained, and that's where blockchain will play a very important role. I strongly believe that, from a token economy perspective, the kind of value you generate for the money that is being paid for it is going to drive it, and that is where anything that is more sticky in terms of society is gonna drive a better value. I personally think that in terms of gaming, much has not happened so far, and there is a lot of work that needs to be done. Probably over the next 1 or 2 years, we'll see multiple companies coming up with their version of Web3 economy and the entire, and therefore the tokenization and the NFT marketplace would get done. The other thing is, of course, NFT. I believe that, the kind of NFT economy that you can imagine with gaming is far, far different from what you can do with multiple other streams, right? And that is something that we are very, very bullish about, because the content formats are multiple. You have so much of content that can generate multiple, NFTs and can be traded, can be owned, is all that is really going to add a lot of value. And I think, unfortunately, all of this is happening when that hasn't really taken off. But gaming in general can be a big change in the way that can be perceived. And we are very bullish about it. We are taking multiple steps, as I said, and hopefully will be the driver of change. Yeah.
Bruno, one thing that we talked about last year with the rise of Axie Infinity was what model makes sense in the future. Like, if we do get to meaningful audiences sizes, we're participants in this ecosystem, which of these models, we've seen the rise and fall of play to earn. We've seen now a lot of the emergent switch to play and earn. Axie recently converted to optional integration of blockchain. Where are you curious or excited to see? Do you think either of those models is going to potentially be interesting? Do you see another model potentially arising? Do you see this as something that's not going to be relevant for the next couple years? What do you think is going to win out in the integration of these enabling technologies on the Web3 side?
Yeah. The way I think is start with why. Like, why do we want to have that? Is it for acquisition, so people are motivated to come in? Then do we want people to think, I can go play that game because I can earn money? So we're attracting an audience that is motivated by the prospects of making money with the game. Or is it to retain people? Now, I like playing this game, but I have an asset, so if I hold this asset, it may go up in value. But then are we creating expectations that it will? What if it doesn't? Then does that reflect back on the developer? Because even if we didn't like outright said that, so we need to be very careful on managing expectations and thinking of the purpose of like, why do certain things? But I think it starts with the good product. So I think the evolution will be, number one, innovate on the game design and build a good product in the first place, right? That has legs and can last for a long time. And then look at the appetite for our audience. Like, would it help? Would people be excited about owning that content, and then, it's integrated with other metaverses and all that, idea that is not there yet. And so it's a challenge. Like, if we go too fast in that, and then it takes 4 years, 5, 6 years to get there, and we don't have that luxury right now, right? We need to go conquer, find a crack in the market, earn market share with a good product, bring an audience in. And we're focused on people that just want to have fun, right? In the end, they want to play games, they want to play with their friends, and they can find that experience with us. They're not necessarily looking for profits. That could be a nice to have, on top, but at least, in the short term, that's how we're looking at it.
In the short term, how do you see the macro, apart from the experience of the people inside of these worlds, from an economic standpoint, how do you see the macro evolving for, call it, the next couple quarters? One thing that has been a hot topic, especially in some of the sessions yesterday, is what kind of investment environment are we in? We've got a lot of allocators, venture capitalist investors, private equity at the summit today. What do you think, given the inbound interest your companies have enjoyed from strategics and institutional investments still now, even with the correction, what do you think that looks like from an entrepreneur's perspective? You're on the inside of something that a lot of the participants here are looking outside in. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so we definitely feel that the kind of value a gaming company, or for that matter, particularly a platform like Router can build, is something which is the fundamentals are very, very strong. As I said, I mean, again, talking about my platform, that the streaming platform is pretty democratized. It's not dependent on, the risk factors are very different. It's more dependent on how, whichever game is doing well, people would come in. Also, the fact that we strongly believe, world has seen multiple changes over the last 3-4 years. COVID came, it went away, but few things have remained consistent, and the fact that people will continue to play games, there'll be a gamer in each and every household, is what is driving perhaps the confidence of investors who are looking at us, and they believe that with strong fundamentals, and with a very large addressable market, that is something that we can really build value on. And something that you said, that the enterprise value of something like this is only going to increase as more and more people continue to become gamers in different kinds. So we are very, very positive about it. We see that if fundamentals are strong, there is no reason why we will not be able to continue growing and being backed by the right set of people.
Yep. And then Bruno, what does that look like? I mean, given the attention that your company has drawn from the large strategics, what does that look like from the incumbent perspective? How do they view the world right now?
Yeah, I think it's going to get selective on both sides, right? Like, we're going to be looking for investors that can help us, can add value, and similarly on the other end, investors are looking for good companies. So there may dry out some of that frenzy of like chasing trends, right? And there may be some consolidation as well in some of these spaces, and some winners are going to start to emerge. For us in particularly is looking at our options within our industry as well, both from investors, venture capitalists, and established gaming companies that can also help us publish the game, take it to different parts of the world, bring us into new platforms, so forth and so on. So we've been fine. I think we don't really see any impact. Gaming also is kind of recession-proof and actually does better, when people have more time in their hands, or and it's been enjoying 20-25% annual growth. So I think we're in a good spot. It's also a $300 billion industry. It has like already a very established revenue pool that we can go after. So from that standpoint, we've been fortunate, I think, in that way.
Great. I think one thing that I'm most curious to hear about, we torpedoed the hour-long block, if this clock is correct. With the very few minutes that we have left, would love to field questions or thoughts from the audience. Have you been given more questions than answers in this session? What's on your minds? Let's see if any brave souls want to pull some more out of the two of you guys.
Well, that's a very large part of my story, to be honest. For some reason, we have missed that bus. The 400 million plus people are actually playing games which are not built in India. Most of the global gaming studios have penetrated into the mobile gaming market, and they have managed to build different versions that Indians can play with, which is games which are not that heavy on phone, etc., etc. But except for one game which did very well in India, a game called Ludo, which people play in households and pretty much all age groups play. Having said that, what we have seen very closely is that multiple gaming studios are now coming up with games which probably will start to do well in the next 3 to 5 years. Most importantly, we believe that in the Web3 gaming or the blockchain gaming space, there'll be many Indian games which will do well. But that is a part of our pitch, that if you're looking to be a part of Indian market, unfortunately, there are no publishers there, right? Which makes, not to make a pitch, but which makes us probably a very investable business. It's the reason why probably a lot of people want to be around us, because of the community that we're building over there.
Gentleman in the back, I think I saw your hand. Ooh.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
The question was, does the potential opportunity for this higher fidelity metaverse expand if it goes from a bulky form factor sitting on your face to something like a contact lens, though you said, like that's interesting.
Yeah. In fact, this I saw in one of the videos which Mark Zuckerberg was explaining, right? He said, if I'm not wrong, that Meta is working on one of the versions which would be a contact lens kind of an experience. He said that's what the R&D team is working on. I think I saw it in a flight about 3 weeks back. So for sure, strongly believe that is what he said, right? That the experience is very cumbersome right now. If somebody can simplify it, I think the transportation into the metaverse would be much more simpler and swift than, of course, to put a game. You need to really park yourself to kind of experience that. But yeah.
Do you remember the movie, The Matrix? That's the next level, right? I think it would be a cross device. So it would be great, right, if we could just carry and immerse, but it would be on your phone as well. It's kind of anywhere you can connect to it.
I think the glasses are coming first, if I'm not wrong. This is what we've seen. I'm very bullish about this. I keep reading. I think the glasses are coming first. It should be maybe in a year or 2 years from now, we would have that experience. Probably followed by contact lens, where nobody can even imagine that you're in a metaverse. Like, that's kind of an experience. You're sitting here, but you're somewhere else.
We might already be, honestly. And it's so seamless that we don't even realize it. All right, how about a buzzer beater with the 30 seconds that we have left? Yes, please. Or Louis Vuitton in League of Legends.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I'll jump in. I'm very bullish on that. I think there's several examples of big games and big designing brands working together. A lot of digital goods are also about fashion, if you will, right? And expressing yourself and creating a lifestyle. And also going to physical stores and then seeing esports jerseys with Nike, but then it's the same in the game. So I think that's only going to go up, and it's going to be a big market.
Yeah, I have an interesting story on it. So we have a lot of brands who work with us, right? And one of the brands offered us that you take our ads on your platform, and we'll give you space on our metaverse. And I was like, it's a little too early for me to do that. But I would rather take dollars right now than to believe something is worth 1 ETH. But no, I personally, and something that we've seen back in India, that the LAN tournaments are now taking off quite a lot. So I personally believe that, and I was about to make a point and let me make this last point, that I believe that one of the things which will happen in the world over the next 2-3 years, and we've seen it with few tournaments that CSGO has done, etc., is that if there is something that will bring people together offline again, gaming can be a very, very big part of it. People may not want to go to a music concert or maybe few sports, but gaming can be a great enabler, and from there, the metaverse experience will become even swifter. Yeah, that's the kind of world, at least, I imagine, being in this business.
Well, the music's not playing yet, like they do with, isn't the Academy Awards? Does that mean we get to hang out more? We can always linger as well, and these guys will hang. Yes. I don't see anybody throwing stuff at us. Let's squeeze in one more. unless we get hit with tomatoes by the people in the back. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you want to go first?
I would love to say I do, but like,
No,
my tech director.
And we have a different story altogether. You know, in India, the market is growing, and the market is growing from top to bottom. You know, it's not bottom to up. What I mean is that a large part of people who hold better phones already are into gaming, but people who have lesser quality phones or not with great technology, say a $100, $120 phone, that is where we are trying to penetrate, right? And that is the role of the technology. Can a good streaming experience hold in a $100 phone, right? So we are doing it the other way, that if we have to grow mass, we have to ensure that our platform, pretty much plays everywhere. So it's the other way for us right now. Exactly. Yeah, we need to grow like maybe, yeah, I mean, whatever be the experience, we should be there. So we are going actually top to bottom is what we are looking at.
Awesome. Well, as much as I'd like to keep you here for another hour to chat more about this is super fun. Thank you so much for all of you joining us. Thank you to our panelists.